it's lovely to have you with us. Just sit back, relax and listen to an hour's worth of football chat here on Premier League tonight. We're going to be talking about people who've made a good or bad first impression with your football club. Graham Poll is going to join us here in the studio a little bit later on to talk about some of the big moments in his career. There's lots to discuss. If you'd like to join the conversation, it's #PL tonight. We've got Rio and Jermaine still with us, and Glenn's popped in to join us. Hey, I tell you what, Heung-min Son is some player, isn't he? The others get the headlines, but he just performs week in, week out.
Yeah, he was excellent today, and he has been for quite some time. But he's got everything about him. I think the big thing now, he believes he's a part of this team, part of this club. He's got the confidence there. He's always had ability, but I think he's put that consistency together. He's seeing pictures now that when he first arrived, you didn't think he was going to be that sort of player, but he's rich.
You think that's a belief or a self-confidence
Yeah, I think
thing?
Self-confidence, the manager's given him that. Yeah. He's had time to adjust, but I really feel he feels now, if there was a cup final to be played tomorrow for Spurs, he'd be in that starting 11. I don't think he felt that 2 years ago.
OK, right, well, let's carry on talking about Spurs then. Let's hear from John. He's a Spurs fan.
Just finished at Wembley, we've won 4-0. Harry Kane's surpassed Teddy Sheringham's Premier League goal-scoring record as well at the age of 24. Everyone played brilliantly. Shout out to Heung-min Son, who was absolutely great. Ali, Eriksson, all of the defence. Everton were absolutely terrible though. I don't know what their game plan was, but it didn't work. But great for us going into a really difficult month of fixtures, so up the Spurs.
Yeah, so he's happy up the Spurs, he says. I want to talk about Everton and the Theo Walcott link. The way that Sam was talking in his press conference this week, it almost sounded like the deal had been done. You would have been there when Theo went to the World Cup at that young tender age, and we one of these sort of great hopes. You've played with him for your country, you've watched him for years. How do you feel about where things have ended up for Theo at the moment and how important a move is for him now?
He burst onto the scene and everyone was talking about the potential he had, and yet rightly so. But for me, I don't think he's fulfilled that potential. He should have been going into this Arsenal team and being a mainstay and taking over the mantle as the go-to guy with the ability, the pace, the power, how direct he was. And I just think as a player, I don't think he evolved as well as maybe his potential suggested. And there was always that muted, I want to be a centre-forward rather than a winger, and that never materialised. And you can only look at yourself in them situations. I think this is a perfect opportunity for him now to come out of the shadows at Arsenal and go into a team like Everton and try and take that mentor and the responsibility of being a main star player in the team, because he promised that so often for Arsenal and never really delivered that on a consistent basis.
You believed in him?
I think he had belief in him, and he had belief for him to fulfil the potential, but I just don't think he ever did that. And he scored goals, he scored some important goals here and there, but when you're looking to become a top level player, consistency is so key in becoming that. And I think that the players in your team then rely on you and look to you in certain situations to win big games and defining moments in periods for teams, and he never really done that. And I think for the likes of Sanchez and Ozil to come in and take over their mantles as well, I think personally as a player you'd take that as a hit on your pride.
Rio seems to very much be laying this at Theo Walcott's door, nobody else's.
I feel for him because I think I've said it before many times about Theo, he was fast-tracked too quickly. And as a youngster, you need to be coached. Because you're in the first team, they leave you alone. He wasn't taken back and given the extra little bit of how to make movement, where to be, where the ball's here. He was faster at 16, I think.
It's not only ever a good thing that he got the chance to experience a World Cup. He was in the first team. He was made to feel like he was a superstar.
Yeah, but how's that
bad?
He's learning on the job. Where you've got to learn as a youngster, you've got to go in there and you've got to take every game. There's things that you're going to make mistakes on, even positional things. For me, he's got pace to burn. But he never really knew if he was a striker or a wide.
But he must know by now, Glenn. He's in his late 20s now.
I agree with you. He's 20. He's in his actual peak. He hasn't even hit his peak yet. At 27 to 32, he could hit his peak. He really can, because the game he should understand the game by then. And I don't think he's ever really been taught the game. He doesn't really understand the game. He's still actually like a 22-year-old.
I'd like to ask him, Glenn. I'd like to ask him, do you feel you've been let down by coaches? Do you think you've been neglected in that area? Do you think scoring the hat-trick for England against Croatia, away in Croatia, went against him because people start automatically think you're almost a finished article? He doesn't have to work on him because of what he's showing us in certain games. And I think that's what I'd like to know. And I think he's been admirably quite a quiet guy. You haven't heard too much about Theo in terms of speaking out and whatnot. But in terms of football, I'd love to know from him, does he feel that he could have had more from coaches around him?
I think he's about maybe 4 years too late in terms of moving as well. For the last 4 years, he's not been a starting 11 player for Arsenal Football Club. He's been in and out, off the bench, starting in European fixtures this season. They haven't kind of turned to Theo really at any stage over the last few years and gone, you are one of our main players, you're one of our senior players, and we're going to start you every single week. That for me would have been alarm bells, and I think he should have probably looked at that point then and gone, I need to kick on and go and make myself the player that I believe I can be somewhere else, because this isn't the place for that. He may get the opportunity to do that now.
If any player gets treated like that, you're never going to get your true potential. You're never going to feel, like we said about Son earlier, he's gone on leaps and bounds. He feels a part of that first 11 now, that spine of the team. And I think Theo's never had that cushion. He's never had that, well, if I have a couple of poor games, I still know I'm going to be... The management are behind me. I'm learning. I've got people that's taking me away, analysing my game, improving my game.
Has he been mismanaged? Is that what you're saying?
Slightly, yeah. I think a lot of it's got to come down to him as well. You know, I don't know whether he is somebody that seeks knowledge and wants to be thirsty and to improve and go out there and spend hour and hour. I don't know if he's like the type of player, but the manager or a coach or somewhere along the line. I felt sorry for him because at 15 he was in Southampton reserves, 16 he was in the first team. England took him away far too early. You know, he got the move to Arsenal before he was ready to go to Arsenal. And I think he needed to be coached. He needed some help there. And if you haven't got the right experienced players that are going to put their arm around him or the coaches there, it's going to take him a hell of a long time to learn what he needs to do. I've just watched him over the period of time not go where he could have gone because he got the talent. That's
and it frustrates you, I think, because he's got all the tools to go on and be a game changer at the top level because the pace he possesses, he can take any defender out of the game. But it's them same mistakes in terms of identifying the right time to make runs, the timing, then decision making once you get in, and that's a winger's bread and butter.
I know a lot of players watch this show. If he's watching this now, what would you want him to do if he gets the move to Everton? What do you want to see in his game that you've not been seeing at Arsenal?
Definitely decision making. Be more decisive in that area, but also just the runs and being direct. And there are times in his Arsenal career where you think the penny's dropped, he's on it, and then all of a sudden he's out of the team again through performance or whatnot, or whatever Arsene Wenger deemed for him to come out of the team. And I think the level of consistency to go into a team and really push on and show people, this is why I went on the plane early to a World Cup, this is why I was in the England squad so early, this is why I was in the team.
I've watched him, I still would love to just see him be brilliant, because you saw this great kid, you know. It's
promises so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Simple as that, and he'll achieve that if he gets to play week in, week out.
Okay. Interesting chat, thanks guys. Let's move on then, take a look at the headlines from today. 7 games, 7 big games as well, blank and blue. Difficult times for Chelsea, another 0-0 draw for them. He is not a happy man at the moment. Antonio Conte will talk about them very shortly. Finally, West Brom, for the first time since August, have won a game of football in the Premier League. They needed that. 20 rounds of Premier League games, and finally they pick up a win. And Saints and Sinners, a real big incident in that game. The Doucouré handball up against Southampton. Of course, Saints were leading at the time, and then the handball happened. You may well have seen it. It's been all over social media. It's a big story from today, and it's fair to say Saints fans are aggrieved. Let's hear from John Bailey.
Absolutely gutted. We were totally robbed by Watford there with a last-minute handball. Totally fuming. We really could have done with the 3 points today. I'd be well up for them experimenting with VAR at St Mary's. We always seem to get robbed by the refs. It was the same in the League Cup final last season. You know, we should have won that, and maybe we'll get relegated from the points we've lost today.
Well, exactly, that's the point, isn't it? And it was 2 points, I suppose, really, for Southampton. There you can see that. I mean, look at that. It couldn't be more blatant. I know that sometimes still images like this don't tell the whole story and they can make things look a lot worse than they actually are. But let's bring Graham Poll into the conversation. And Graham, we've all had the chance to see this, and that doesn't really make it look more blatant than it was. It was pretty clear, wasn't it?
It was, even at full speed, you kind of call it as a handball. You know there's something wrong with a goal. And what frustrated me about the game was Roger East refereeing the game. Watford were building up a head of steam. They got 1 goal back from 2-0 down. They were attacking. You'd be on your toes as a referee. You'd be looking for things, and you should be sharp. And if you're sharp, you don't miss that kind of decision. If a team's 5-0 up and that happens, of course you should never miss it, but you can kind of see why. In this situation, a referee's got to be at it, and he's got to see that kind of thing going on.
And of course, we have to lay a fair amount of the blame at Roger East's door. But also, Doucouré, you don't want footballers looking to get sneaky handballs to win matches. It just doesn't sit nicely with fans or opposition players. But there's nothing the FA can do about this, is there? If it was a dive, the FA could take a look at this and have a word, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If a player successfully deceives a match official by diving, then he'll be retrospectively banned for 2 matches. There's nothing at all that they can do in this situation. So Watford have got the point. Southampton have lost 2 points from it, and it's a very, very unsatisfactory situation. And of course, we're all looking at VAR to solve this, which it would, because it's a clear and obvious error. So they would come in, they would overrule this, and the goal wouldn't stand. But the match officials on today's game shouldn't need VAR. They should see that, and that's I don't like criticising referees. Roger's a good referee, and he's just had a bad moment in this game, and it's poor.
There's still plenty of criticism actually coming in for the Southampton players, even though there was a handball incident. You think maybe I'm being a bit tough by calling it deliberate? Maybe it wasn't deliberate.
I don't think it was deliberate. I think, yes, Graham's right. It should have been seen at this level. They're professional now. They should, between the linesman and the referee, all that sort of thing, of course. I don't think 5 yards, 6 yards before that, as that ball's being flashed across, he's thinking, I'm going to handle this. He tries to get his head there, and it's a reaction. It's a reaction at his hand. He's not gone like that. I don't think he's trying to score with his hand. It's a reaction that you're expecting the officials to say, hang on a minute, that was handball, free kick. And when it doesn't happen, there's no player on this planet is going to say, by the way, ref, I handled that. It's not a goal.
Would you want him to, when you was managing, to have gone, hold on a minute, a bit of integrity, excuse me?
You see their manager, he was it went right over to the manager, the camera, and he was celebrating like nothing.
You'd probably give him a bonus, wouldn't he?
Well,
I think Glenn's right. It wasn't deliberate, but it clearly happened. Yeah. And I'm also right in saying that if Doucouré had actually thought, you know what, I can't get a point in the Premier League game by knowing I've touched it with my hand. If he went to the referee after the goal had been given and said, actually, ref, I touched that, there's nothing the ref can do, is there?
No, there's not, and I'm going to get killed by Rio and JJ for this one. But if a player comes up and says to you, honestly, I've handled that ball, don't allow the goal, it was a reactive thing, I can't help myself, just disallow it. You'd have to say, I can't, because I haven't seen it, and I can't just go on what you're telling me. I have to go on what I've seen. And I can talk to my assistant, he hasn't seen it either, I have to give a goal. And that seemed unsatisfactory because the guy's being honest, but that's football.
Wow. So I'll handball it, knowing that I can get away with it then. Mm-hmm. You can handball it and know that you can get away with
Robbie
it.
Fowler once with a penalty. Well, I think someone fouled him, and he admitted to diving and said, no, it's not a penalty, and the ref still gave the penalty.
That's actually ridiculous, Graham, when you think about it, isn't it? There has to be some sort of recourse for a referee when a player says, do you know what, ref, I know you've given it, but you can't give it.
You've got to see it from the other side as well, OK? So if you believe him and you disallow the goal, a moment later, you think you've seen a handball, you give it because you're pretty sure. He comes to you, he's put it in the net, he comes to you, goes, I promise you, I told you last time I handled it, this time I didn't. Then you're in a position, so you've got to be consistent. You're always told you give what you see, and that's all you can do. And that's one of the reasons why they're bringing VAR in.
You've done well there, Graham. You got out of that one.
Yes, actually.
He did all right, but it's still a much stranger situation for the player who has scored the goal to come and tell you that you need to take that goal away. It's unheard of.
We know players. You wouldn't do that in an eight-a-side when you're playing against each other.
No, exactly. It's unheard of.
In an eight-a-side.
You've seen players. You've seen players in the past. You've seen players in the past tell the ref he didn't actually touch me when the ref's blown for a foul or something. We've seen that. Asking exactly as you said, don't send him off.
Yeah, but that's for your benefit. Oh, what? Saying that don't send him off?
Yeah.
That's a little bit different to a last-minute winner. Goal. Or a last-minute equaliser,
yeah.
Sorry. For you as a player to go up, having equalised in the last minute and say to a referee, listen, I am bored that, for the sake of your officials, you need to rectify the situation. It's slightly different, to you then, I don't know.
It's a strange emotion, actually, because he would have known, Doucouré, wouldn't he, that even if it was not intentional, he would know that the cameras have seen it, everyone is going to be talking about it, and he kept looking at the line as he walked away, didn't he?
That's the thing now. He'd be on the coach on the way home, whatever he's doing.
I still think he knew what he was doing.
Do you?
Yeah,
You really do?
Yeah, I do, because I think
He's trying to get his head there.
still, but why I don't get why. I think he knows if he puts his arm in the right area, it will hit it. I think he's just trying to be. No, he knows he's not going to head the ball, and he's thinking, well, if it hits my arm and goes in, then I'll see what happens.
Just chancing his arm. Literally.
Literally.
If we have a look at the I mean, it's a strange position for that right arm compared to the left. Actually, when you look at it like that.
I think he knows what he's doing. Unfortunately, I do. Yeah.
I don't want to think that though. Do you?
He's done it in a nanosecond. If he has, it's a nanosecond.
But sometimes though, you will all know, having played the game, that's how it is, isn't it, in football? Something happens all so quickly, you kind of make a conscious decision, but it's in the moment almost.
Yeah, you do that with passes. You do it in play. You do it. It's an instinct. It just happens.
Well, you'd think that perhaps the Southampton fans would cut their manager a bit of slack for dropping a couple of points, but JJ Hughes, that couldn't have been any more predictable today. Sack Pellegrino before it's too late, please. Nige says it might be handball, but shocking from Saints. And Pellegrino again. We could all see this at half-time. Fresh Saints, Maurizio Pellegrino's game management is a joke. It's genuinely laughable. All that hard work in the first half has been undone from failing to react to a 4-4-2 long ball. When do we say enough is enough? And Ashley Whiteway, the only tweet I want to see from Southampton is the one announcing Pellegrino's sacking. And all that from a man who basically drew a game of football because of that handball. A couple of quick ones on Theo Walcott. Peter Reeves, is the problem with Theo and the Ox not them and more Wenger's management of young players? And Finton McHale talking about Walcott, another indictment on Wenger not developing players who have obvious talent. Right, plenty more still to talk about. Let us know during the break which team you support and the 3 words that sum up your team's performance today. We'll read out your 3-word match reports after the break. Plenty more still to talk about. Graham Poll will join us a bit later as well. See you for the second part of Premier League Tonight next.
You would never see Chelsea having a batch of games where they can't score a goal, for starters. But yeah, I think I've said it recently. I think he's got people have sussed the way they're playing. Yeah. It was great last year when he switched into that back five, and they do play a back five. They get forced back into a five. They don't get out and attack. You can play as a back three in possession, but I think he looks that Italian way, and I think he's got to change it. He's got to go back to another system that's going to work. They're predictable at the moment. They really are.
3 defensive midfielders today up against Leicester. And I also wonder about the manager. He was asked this week about his future, and instead of just saying, I'm really happy here, I'm loving it, he just said, in football, everything is possible. It's not a glowing endorsement for wanting to stay long-term at Chelsea.
No, it isn't, but I think he's probably looking at the history of managers that have been at the football club. We mentioned, Pete, you can win the league and still get the sack there. And that's been the way things have been at Chelsea over the past few years. But I think also that a manager's demeanour and mood will filter down through to the players, and I think that's what we've seen, especially the turn of the year, the run of results they've had. There isn't a sharpness, there isn't a spark around that squad at the moment, and that you can see in him, the manager. You see him in his press conferences. He's had this little spat with Mourinho. Also, he seems like he's a little bit downtrodden, and that spark he had before isn't there at the moment.
I'm seeing strange decisions though. Also, we talk about the 3 in midfield. Now, obviously, that's to strengthen you. I mean, in what we watched before we came out to prepare for this game, Leicester were more than on top and creating so many chances. In the last 2 games I've watched, he's also dragged Hazard around the 80 or 75 minute mark. I mean, he's your best player. If anyone's going to get you a goal, it's going to be Hazard. Whether he's got an injury,
he did it today.
I know he's taken off again today. Yeah. So whether he's got an injury or not, I'm not so sure. But strange decisions that are happening on the pitch as well, which I'm sure are not helping with things in and around the stadium.
And he was asked about going in for Alexis Sanchez as well. And instead of giving an answer like, well, I'd really like the player or I don't really want the player, the journalist in the press conference said, why are you not bidding for him? And he just said, I don't know. This is a manager who tried to sign him, of course, when he was at Juve, so we know he likes the player. For him to come out and say, I don't know, you almost get the impression that something is going on there behind the scenes. Yeah. He's not happy.
That's his way of saying, I'm not making the decisions on who we're going to go and buy, which is ludicrous. But
as someone who's been a manager, what would it be like trying to manage a football club and not be responsible for who you sign and don't sign?
Well, I think for British managers, that's been really difficult for them. because we've always had the say. I think for if you've managed in Italy and Spain to a certain degree, but for the top teams it doesn't matter. For the AC Milan teams and Inter Milan and Juventus, if you don't get a top player there, you get the second top player, and you go and coach them. We buy the players, you go and coach them. You know. They are adjusting to that. Now, Conte would be used to that. He had the same sort of problem at Juventus in the end. He wants the say. He wants to be a manager that has a big, big part, probably 70, 80% of, we want to get this player, that player, and him. So he's not getting that at Chelsea. That's pretty obvious. And I think the way he answered that about Sanchez is his way of saying it.
And which, by the way, just to kind of balance it out from Chelsea's point of view, is it could be the right way for them to do things. Rio mentioned the history of managers and how long they actually stay at the football club. Why should they go and buy 5 players that Antonio thinks are good for Chelsea Football Club? They're looking at the longer term picture, and if he's highlighting certain players that he wants and they're going, well, we don't want them, and then he's spitting his dummy out. Well,
you have to empower a manager to do their job.
Chelsea actually, managers. Why go and get 6 or 7 players? Why go and get 6 or 7 players that he wants? And suddenly they're thinking, well, if he doesn't want to go, if he's saying that about the end of the season,
managing players that you don't want is not an easy job, is it?
The history, as Rio said, they're going to sack you. They're not going to have 7 players that he wants or 5 players or whatever. If you're a team, and that's the way football's going. You can get in there and 4 months later, you're a fresh new manager, you could be sacked in 4 months. So what you go and buy 7 or 8 players and build a squad for somebody else? Oh, he wants a different style. So that's the way it's going. The owners, the owners and directors and whatever who are putting their own money in are saying we need a little bit of a say, more of a say than ever, because if we are going to sack him, somebody else wants to bring a completely new set of players in.
I think also it's this, that frustration you can see it stems from the transfer window in the summer. He identified players he wanted, and you could see the frustration and disbelief almost in not getting them players, and he felt let down, I'm sure, by the people at Chelsea. And he seems like somebody who can't let that go. And you see him every single week. He looks like he's downtrodden. He looks like he's just got a pure frustration about what's happened to him at this football club at the moment.
Let's talk about Alexis Sanchez and what his future might hold. Can you make a footballing case for him to join Manchester United over Manchester City?
Listen, if I'm going to be honest, I had this discussion with my mates yesterday and today. If he's got an option to go from Arsenal now to go to Manchester City or Manchester United, as a footballer who wanted to win trophies and would judge myself based on trophies being won, at the moment, Manchester City looks like the place to go for him in that respect.
That looked like it hurt.
Wow.
Yeah, it did.
That's a big shout.
Yeah, because they're the top of the league. They're going to win the league this season. Yeah. They're in the Champions League. They're looking like they're going to be in the final for the League Cup, the FA Cup as well potentially. So he's got more opportunities to win trophies there. So
what about for footballing reasons? What about kind of like style of play and kind of what your manager's going to bring to the table?
Well, he knows Pep. He's been at Pep, and I'd say he probably has more of an idea. If Pep wants him again now, I'm sure he's thinking, I'm going to go there and I'm going to do it the second time round. I'm going to do it properly this time.
Do you think there's a lot of top players in Europe right now that may be kind of looked at by United and by City that would have these same thoughts? Well, I'm basically choosing Pep.
Definitely.
As a professional, you have to say that the balance of power is coming back to an even kill almost, and then going that way, because you're looking at Manchester City. They're so far ahead of everybody else, not just in points, but in the way and style that they're playing. They're taking teams out before they've even been out on the pitch in terms of mentally. Teams are saying, how many are we going to get beat by today? So
that's
for
why
a player
they've got
coming
this
in,
arrogant City of saying we're going to £20 million and that is it. Because I'm pretty sure they've had assurances from Alexis Sanchez to say
that's where he wants to go.
Yeah, but then at the same time, for a player, you could, on the other hand, you could say to him, well, hold on a minute. If I'm Manchester United, you say, are you definitely going to start at Manchester City? Because they're firing at the moment. Are you going to start? You're going to start here at Man United every week because we need you to come in and play the games and get us the goals.
For football reasons, I think you're right. City. I think City are the team for the next coming year. You're saying this is where they're going to be in 4, 5, 6 years' time. If he goes to City, I think it's going to happen like that. They're going to overtake Manchester.
That's what I'm interested in.
If it's not footballing reasons, he stays at Arsenal to the end of the year. Yeah. If it's finances, that 30 million
goes
or 20 million
in his
goes to him.
Goes to him.
Yeah.
I know what his wife would be saying.
I mean, for people who don't understand the way that works, if he stayed at Arsenal and walked away as a free agent at the end of the season, his agent could go to any football club and say, look, he would cost you £75 million on
Give him
a
30.
5-year contract. People were going to pay 20 for him in the January window. You give me 5, give him 15, and you get a deal. That's the way it would work, isn't it?
Depends on what he wants, what is going through
Exactly.
his mind at the moment. Does he want to play for football? Does he want to win the league with City? Well, it won't be a full season with City anyway. So you get the medal maybe, but it's not quite the same. Champions League, if they went all the way and won that, yeah, sure, he's going to have a massive influence on that. But you know, it depends on what's going through.
I think at the end of the day, he says to himself, do I take 20, 30 million end of the season because I'm a free transfer, or do I take half of that but win a couple of trophies? I'd take half of that and win a couple of trophies.
One thing I'm amazed about is that you haven't sat here and said, at the moment, I can see the appeal of Manchester City. But if I'm Alexis Sanchez, I'm telling him right now, next season, Manchester United are going to challenge for the Premier League. Next season, Manchester United are going to be back where I remember them being. Go to Manchester United for the long term. Why don't you feel like that?
You didn't ask me that question.
Yeah, I did. I asked you where can you make a
said, where
footballing
would you go
case, and
now?
you said go to
where would you
City.
go now? Not next season. You asked me where would you go now,
what would
given this
United
moment
need
now.
to have
But
that?
you're not talking like a man who thinks that maybe United are going to be back above City next season.
I think Man United have to make a good few signings to get that. There's a lot more reshuffling of the jigsaw that needs to be done at Manchester United than at Manchester City.
Yeah.
Does that hurt you to sit here and say he should join City for footballing reasons?
When we get to the break, I'm going to speak to the lady and ask for some tissues because this isn't good. This isn't a good moment for me. This ain't nice, man. Speaking.
Sorry
listen,
we've done that to you.
it's where it's at. Manchester City, you have to pay the respect that they're due. They're flying.
Absolutely, they are. OK, right, plenty more to come. Fascinating on Premier League tonight, as ever. After the break, Graham Poll will be joining us. So many questions have come in for him already. If you've got one, send it in right now. We'll chat to Graham in a few moments, and we'll see you shortly. Welcome back to Premier League tonight. Some more three-word match reports for you. Roscoe says, I'm a West Ham fan. 3 words for our performance. Lanzini to stay. Slavika says, no more ideas. That's a Chelsea supporter. And Luke, scrap now on. Huddersfield supporter who's concerned about slipping down towards relegation. We never thought we'd see the day when Glenn Hoddle gets substituted for Graham Poll. That's a highlight, isn't it? That's a highlight.
That's made my day.
I bet. Look, Graham, so many questions coming in for you on social media. Thanks for joining us just to sort of have a brief chat about your life as a referee. The first one that's come in, and a few people have asked this actually, funny that, have you ever had to flee a football ground because of angry fans?
Yeah, I did. It was a Monday night game, Sunderland Man United. I don't know if Rio was playing in that. I think Sunderland might have been top at the time. He was second. Sent two Sunderland players off.
Right.
And actually, I got smuggled out because the Sunderland fans surrounded the ref's vehicle. They knew where we parked. Wow. So I got in the assessor's car in the back and put a blanket over me and got me out the back of the stadium.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
But it just shows you what it means to people, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and it's difficult because I mean, I'm there blaming a ref today for the Watford thing, so I'm no better than everyone else. It's a difficult situation. It's a very emotional game. You have to respect that, but you've also got to respect. You know, Roger East today, for example, he didn't mean to make a mistake in that game. Michael Oliver missed a penalty today. Should have given a clear penalty. Referees don't mean it. It's just one of those moments. Players make mistakes in games. You miss it a pass. Centre forwards miss open goals. We're human beings, and you just got to try and keep some perspective on that if you can.
What made you want to be a referee?
I didn't.
Why
You have
not?
no mates, did you? When you growing up, you had no mates.
I tell you, I haven't got any in here. It's one of those. It's one of those funny situations. You know, I was probably as gifted as Rio on the field, but I thought.
Many people were.
Yeah, I thought I had a bit more speed, so use it down the. But no, the team folded. I wasn't that great a footballer, to be honest, and it's something I fell into. My dad had been a ref, only local park stuff, and it just one of those things that happened. And after about 4 games. Two players from each team come up to me and went, thanks a lot, that was a really good ref. And I was only 17 at the time, and that's kind of the praise you don't get as a 17. Well, I never got as a 17, you two probably did as footballers. And that was it, I was away. And once it gets into your blood, you're there.
I played, obviously, with Rio, against Rio, and he was one of the worst when it comes to moaning on the pitch, right? he would not stop getting in referees' ears. Now, how do you attract referees now? We're in a stage now, referees are constantly getting kind of berated on television, by pundits, by players on the pitch.
Social media.
How do we attract the new generation of referees to go, this is a great job for you?
It's a good question. It's interesting now that people are targeting being a professional referee, because when I started there was no such thing as professional referee. And bear in mind, you have 6,000 guys stop being referees every year, and they have to attract 6,000 new ones every year. So it's a big task, and it's more about retention, because a lot of guys do 1 year and give up because they don't like the hassle and the stick. And the one thing that any referee does that sticks at it, they love football. That's why they do it, because they love it, and that's how you pay back.
And
Do they get paid good money now? What type of money would they get paid?
Yeah, a professional referee on the Premier League is about 100 grand a year. A year, not a week.
Good money, that, isn't it?
A year, not a week. Just
Still good money, Graham. Still good money.
Clear.
Did you notice over time with super slow-mo replays and all of the football that's televised now, and particularly the advent of social media, just how much the scrutiny on a referee's performance became almost as important as one of the superstar players?
Yeah, massive. I mean, it was more difficult for us because we were used to not having it when I first got onto the top leagues, and it gradually increased. The difference now for someone like Michael Oliver, that's all he's ever known. Yeah. So he's used to that. So anyone coming in fresh now, that's what it attracts. So you know what you're heading for. Whereas for us, it was difficult. I used to go home from a game, and I thought I got them all right, and it wasn't a problem, and we didn't get the scrutiny, and you thought, well, that's all right. I thought I was quite good. And then over a few years, you start getting lots of replays, and you realise actually it wasn't. And it's a real mess with your mind when you're shown something that you think you've got right, and it's wrong, and you think that's not the same incident. That's not the one. They show me a different incident, and it isn't. It's the one, and it really plays with your mind.
You must have had obviously you refereed loads and loads of games and come across loads of different crazy players.
Yep.
Some good, some bad. Who were the most volatile people that tried to sway your decisions most when you were refereeing?
Well, Keano would be. He's a strong player, Roy Keane. Just because, but he would dominate. He would dominate his own team as well as the opposition, and therefore the referee as well, by his sheer will. He would never try and. I don't think he would ever try and con you or cheat you. But there was just something about him. There was almost an immovable force about Roy that you just thought, bloody hell. And he was scary.
How would you deal with him?
I tried to get on his wavelength, and I tried to make him smile, because I could see some anger rising in him, so I would talk to him, and because I refereed Man United 57 times, so you've got the chance to kind of establish some kind of rapport and relationship with people, and that's what I would try and achieve. Some people didn't like it when they watched me referee, and they said you talk too much to players. I'm not sure you were over keen on it. I think we were all right. We got on okay together.
What made you think Jermaine wasn't over keen?
That look he just gave me.
Wait, is that right?
What, over keen on talking to referees? Some referees I got on with, some I didn't get on with, and if there was certain situations where I felt like the referee wasn't communicating with me very well, I was better off just kind of going, right, I'll just deal with it myself, rather than getting, because all I'd get is frustrated and angry, and it just started to affect my performance. So I just kind of have to just put it to the side and just be like, I don't want to talk to you, just let me do what I'm doing. And then honestly, it can. Training is one of the worst places that you experience it as for any kind of coach who's a ref, and that's when I found out I've got to stop doing this, because in training I would be screaming and shouting at people, and I thought, you know what, I've got to stop having a go at referees. It makes no sense. And
the art of refereeing as well is knowing which players do want to talk and do want to communicate during a game, and knowing which players don't. And you leave the player alone, because you must never affect a player's mood or ability to play adversely. You can't do that. It's not what you're there for.
It is weird though, because there were referees who I used to think if I screamed for decisions, invariably you'd get a decision. They'd not sway your way, but because you screamed first sometimes, it must be
Graham one of them?
Yeah, I used to bully Graham, but no, I'm joking. No, but you did. I used to scream for everything. Yeah, I used to think if I scream for everything, it's just in my psyche. If I scream for every decision, I'm going to get more than I don't.
And what about like when you were warming up before the game? Were you slightly aggressive towards the ref? Were you friendly to the ref? Because the games start right from the minute you arrive at the stadium, don't they?
I used to always in a tunnel, if the referees would walk past, I'd always say, come on, ref, today, you've got to give us a couple. Give us a couple today. You were disgraceful last time, by the way, remember that? Just try and get in there somewhere.
You learnt from Fergie, didn't you? Because he was the master at it. He knew exactly the right
buttons. What did he used to do?
Press. Well, the first time you went to Old Trafford,
they used to have a hot cup of tea for starters.
He'd get right into you. He'd have a go, even if they won, just to go, that's what I'm like, even when we win, so make sure you don't...
Before the game or only after the game?
After the game. Generally wouldn't speak to you before the game. I went the second time as an Arsenal game, funny enough, and I walked up not the players' tunnel, but the tunnel by the changing rooms, and he's standing at the end, and I actually went up and said to him, you know me, don't you? Yeah. I said, you know what to expect today? And he went, yeah, all. And I said, well, you won't be disappointed. And that was it. And from that moment, he said to me afterwards, I spoke to him afterwards, he wrote a piece in my book for me. He said, I respected you from that moment because you were willing to stand up to me. And you think, that's nice. I mean, he still had a go at me many times. Of course he did. The hairdryer was off and on. But he really could dominate some referees, no question.
There's been loads of questions come in for you, so if we could just get through a few of them, that'd be great. Just quite short answers, just to allow people to have their question asked. James Drury, would you like to introduce a 3 yellow card before a sending off law?
I pioneered it. It hasn't worked so far.
Can you briefly give us the story of that? Like, at what point did you think, oh, he's had 3 yellow cards?
In the changing room afterwards, about 20
Honestly?
minutes later, we had no idea. We were celebrating. Our next game was the final.
Oh, man.
And we had no idea. Both assistants were English.
What do you put that down to? Because that's a fundamental ability, isn't it, of a ref, is to know how many yellow cards a player has had.
Yeah.
Had you not written the name down on the back?
Stupidity, fatigue.
Really?
I still don't know to this day.
Strange.
I've never had to refer to. I've sent off 123 players for second yellow cards, and I've never had to refer to my notebook to know I've done it. Because what I do is I mental note. I go, I know I've cautioned him, and I look at players because the technique is if you've been booked and I'm going to book you again, I'm nodding at you to go. You're off. You know you are. And half the time the player realises he runs off. So it's almost like you're accepting it before I've even gone. So it was just a weird. It's one of those perfect storms, or the worst storm for me. I say probably cost me the ultimate football match.
Yeah.
Mind.
Hey,
I mean,
you're here now. Trev, why is the standard of our professional referees so poor that we have none going to the World Cup?
I don't think the standard is poor.
Right.
The reason we have none going to the World Cup is Mark Clattenburg, who was probably the #1 referee in the world at the time, decided to retire and seek his fortune elsewhere. Can't blame him, it's good money for him. And we didn't have another referee in the elite group.
OK. Stuart says, would a mic help the referees to get less abuse from players?
It could do, but the players and the managers don't want it.
Why not?
Because it would expose some of the stuff that's being said out there that they don't want.
Referees ain't angels, by the way.
I know. I got reported once.
Yeah, it's not just the players. Referees have got a lot to say out there, trust me.
Really?
Oh, definitely. They come straight back at you with the same language.
But you sort of need to, though, don't you? You have to be on the players'
that. When I played, I loved it when I shouted, like Graham was one of them, if I said something derogatory to one of them, toned down, obviously.
Yeah.
I loved it when they came back with a bit of banter towards me, because then I was on a good wavelength for them, and I thought that we can talk a little bit throughout the game and almost help each other through the game at times. And I think that's important. I think that's something that's kind of crept out of the game a little bit.
Rio was always joking. I remember a challenge I went into at Old Trafford one time, and it was a bad challenge. I've gone flying in. He's ran from centre half. Oh my God, referee! Gets right next to me. He's giving me a little look. He's like, "That's a green, ref. That's a green." I'm looking at him thinking, Rio, I know you. Come on, man, don't do this to me. I don't need to get sent off. He's like, it's a green. I was like, all right, fair enough. Always joking, non-stop.
Oh, man. Look, thanks ever so much for joining us. One final thing before we get to the break. Your headlines on how VAR has gone. It's been out for the last sort of week or so. What do you think?
We have to remember it's an experiment, so it's not perfect by any means. There needs to be more communication with the fans in the stadium. I think we've forgotten the fans in the stadium, and there's a review going on, and they're just sitting there going, what's happening? So I know Mike Riley said they're probably going to put on a screen now, review underway. You've only got to review clear and obvious. Stop messing about and doing... I saw the Chelsea-Arsenal game, and they're looking at stuff which they shouldn't be looking at, in my opinion. But I think, having been to Stockley Park where it's all reviewed, they've got the system there. They just need to apply it properly, which they will do in time. You know, we've got probably another 18 games in this country, and you'll get stuff today. You know, there were 3 clear and obvious errors by referees that will be corrected, and that's what we're looking for. Not the 50-50s, not the debatables, the clear and obvious.
Good man. I think we'll have this conversation again later in the season and get you in, have another chat about refereeing. And what people at home don't see is you keeping the boys in check in the Winnebago before we go on air.
Someone's got to do it. It's
absolutely they have. Right, in the final part today, we're going to talk about first impressions of players. We saw a debut today for Cenk Tosun, who's the new player for Everton. Get thinking about players who've done brilliantly or awfully on their debut for your club, and we'll talk about that in the final part of Premier League tonight after the break. Thank you, Graham. Good man. Welcome back, Glenn.
Yeah.
Did you get a cup of tea?
No, nothing.
What?
Nothing.
Leo again. The floor manager.
Leo.
I enjoyed watching that. It was good.
At least he's got the aircon finally turned off. Rory's sent us a tweet. Fair play to Graham Bolt. Actually made me think about becoming a ref. Did he convince you?
No.
No. OK, right, it's time to talk about dream debuts or nightmare starts at various football clubs. We'll get the thoughts of these three in a second, but first, from you guys as ever.
I think the worst first impression for a Burnley player has to be Adi Akinbaye. We signed him up for a record fee at the time, and within 4 minutes of his debut, he got sent off, he headbutted a player, he grabbed him by the throat, full-on violent conduct, live on the telly as well.
Sir Bobby Robson, home debut, 8-0 against Sheffield Wednesday. Thank you very much. What a way to introduce yourself to the Geordie faithful.
Lloyd Doyley back in 2001, not just because Lloyd went on to become a club legend, playing over 400 games for the Orns, but because of the circumstances in which his debut occurred. At home to Birmingham, Pierre Issa dislocated his shoulder and was stretched off the pitch to make way for Lloyd. However, whilst being carried off, the physio slipped and dropped Issa on the shoulder that he had just dislocated.
Worst first impression at Southampton FC must be Ali Jar. He came on the pitch for one game after convincing Graham Souness, our manager, that he was the cousin of George Weah, which you can tell really wasn't true because he was awful.
Now, there is only one contender for the best ever Premier League debut, and it happened 18 years ago, practically to this very day. I'm going to take you on a journey. We're going to go back to Stamford Bridge. Chelsea are playing Tottenham, a game where we never lose. It's tight, it's 0-0. There's 2 minutes left. Dennis Wise does some brilliant work on the wing, whips it over. Suddenly, George Weah, the president of Liberia, rises, knocks it in. Chelsea win 1-0, and that day I knew he was destined for great things.
Oh, good days. What was it, George?
Amazing.
What's it like as a manager when you sign players and they sort of turn up for training on that very first day? It's sort of a key moment, isn't it, to get a look at them on the training pitch for the first time, and your heart either sinks or you think, hold on, I've got a cracker here.
Well, I reversed that because I'll tell you, Arsene Wenger's heart must have sunk when I was a player and went to Monaco. Yeah. My first day, you know, whatever I've done, 13 years at Tottenham, goes out.
The great Glenn Hoddle.
So I don't know. You just go there and you think the first training session, I don't care who you are, you're a bit nervous. You think, well, I've got to now stamp, you know, I've got to earn my right here. Well, I dropped my shoulder, and there's an 8-a-side going on. I've dropped my shoulder, lovely, and I've never done it in my life. Never once stood on the ball, fell AOT.
Did you?
Yeah, on the floor, and everyone just, it was that moment where everyone looked and they're thinking, oh, no. What has he bought here? Who's he got? Who's he got here? And Arsene just looked, and so I experienced that myself as a player. My first day's.
Do you remember the feeling? Were you embarrassed or what?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm trying to say no. You sort of get up and try and brush yourself down.
But I think training, me personally, every time I move to a new club, the first training session amongst your teammates is the most nerve-wracking because they're the ones who are going to judge you. They're the ones you've got to prove. Right. This is the price tag you've come for. Justify it right now. And they're all looking at you going, go on, what you got? Yeah. No matter how much they've seen you, how much they've played against you, show me now what you've got. And it's hard, man.
One of the best ones I ever saw was at Newcastle United, and we just signed Jonathan Woodgate. And Bellas and Kieran were kind of the lively two in the changing room, and they played him against Leeds and tore him apart, to be fair. Anyway, we finished his training session and Bellas and Kieran are in his ear going, I don't know why we bought you. We absolutely annihilated you at Ellen Road earlier in the season. So it ended up, Bellas going, come on, let's have a 1v1 now. And Woody went, all right, then, let's do it. So Richie went, got a bag of balls, stood on the halfway line, no goalie, and Woody went, you won't score in this goal. Bellas has tried to take him down the line. Woody's gone all the way with him, gone, bosh, there you go, give me the ball. And everyone went, to be fair, you can't not respect that. You know what I mean? In front of everybody, in front of the whole team. And we all just kind of, Bellas went, right, fair play.
At that point, though, Jonathan Woodgate's just got to take the challenge on, hasn't he? What does he do on his first day? He doesn't back down, does he? And say, oh, no, you're all right.
That takes a certain type, by the way. It takes a certain type to stand up like that and go, OK, let's go on, let's have it, trust me. And, you know,
it's not a case of players making new guys feel totally welcome and make them feel part of the squad. It's about sort of testing them a bit on that first day, is it? Like,
no, it depends. I don't know. I think you want them to hit the ground running. So you don't want to break them on the first day. You want them to come into the team and go, you know what, I'm meant to be here. You test them a few weeks down the line. Once they're in, they've got their feet under the table, and you start digging them a little bit and prodding them and trying to see what motivates them, what makes them tick. I think first days, I want to be welcomed in with open arms. I remember one of my first training sessions, we played a little piggy in the middle. At United, yeah. And I remember the ball came to me and I went to play it on the volley or something, and the ball slid off. It was a wet surface, obviously. And the ball hit me in the face, right? And I remember I heard Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the babyface assassin, butterwater melt. He went, how much? Confidence went to an all-time low. I couldn't believe it. Oh my goodness.
What were you like with players? I mean, if you just bought a new player, you want to make life as easy as possible for them day one, don't you?
Manager, yeah, you want to. I relate it back to my own experience at Monaco. Yeah, you wanted to bring them in, and you want them to just hit the road running and get the respect of their teammates and whatever. I had a slight problem with Mark Stein. I was at Chelsea, and it was like we'd paid. At the time, I think it was 1.2, which for Chelsea at the time was amazing.
Big money, yeah.
So, and he was a goal scorer. I'd watched him, and in training, oh my word, the goals he scored, if it was a five-a-side goal, full size, it didn't matter. He was a goal scorer. Could he get off the mark? Really? He couldn't get off the mark, and I had to stay month after, and eventually he got the one goal, and then he broke the Premier League record. Yeah. He just went back-to-back goals and had a run of 10, 12 games. It was amazing. He was a tough one because I had to stay with Mark at the time. But I could see in training, and everyone, all the players could see what a finisher he was. And it just didn't happen in that first period of time.
And you would imagine, one football club is the same as another, but the difference between, say, the Tottenham and the QPR dressing room or the United and the QPR dressing room must be like night and day. Just totally different football clubs, different characters, different people come to the fore.
I think that's for a whole different Premier League tonight.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is. You opened up a different
and that's
kind of
not a joke. It really is. It's chalk and cheese. And I can only imagine what Rio must have thought, because it was, Rio's come from a club that was winning things and was driven. I came from a very well-run football club, and I was in shock. So, save that for another show.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll do it the next time you're both on. Tee it up for us in 10 seconds. What can we expect to hear about?
Well, I remember being in the car. Me and Bobby Zamora used to travel back and forth to training, and I remember after a couple of weeks, he looked at me in the car and kind of put his hand across and said, "Rio, what are you doing?"
And on that note, we shall discuss life at QPR for the two of you on another Premier League tonight. Look, thanks for joining us as always. We'll see you Tuesday evening, Leicester against Fleetwood in the FA Cup. Next weekend, BT Sports Score, Man City against Newcastle, then Premier League tonight. Thanks for joining us on the show where Rio Ferdinand told Alexis Sanchez to join Man City, not Man United. Good night.
Tell me this is reality. Huddersfield 1, West Ham United 4. Where did that second half performance come from? Get in!
Sam Allardyce has to get it sorted very quickly before we get dragged back into the relegation fight.
Huge win for the Albion today, massive game, must win, and the boys did it.
Brighton conceded a goal yet again from set pieces, particularly corners again. It's just not good enough.
It's a great point away from home against the champions, and it's another point towards catching Burnley.
We're watching the Red and Blue Army ringing around Sellers Park again today. Another win.
For us, that's 2 points dropped. But on the positives, 4 unbeaten. Goal on Manchester City, easy.